So I want to welcome everybody to our Solar and Energy Efficiency Workgroup meeting for our special presentation today on the Sustainable Building Code developments in Arizona, International Green Construction Code, and the AZ Build Green Coalition. I have three special guests with me today that are going to be talking to you about the Sustainable Building Code developments. The first is Anitra Pickett. We also have Anthony Floyd and Braden Kay. And so they're going to be talking today about the developments in the state for the adoption and use of green building codes. Anitra is going to be talking to us about a new nonprofit coalition aimed at bringing together resources for use by local green building champions. Anthony is our Green Building Director of the City of Scottsdale, and he's going to be sharing with us tips for moving the IgCC from a voluntary code to 28 IgCC projects to how to adopt them more concertedly in your community. And then also Braden will be discussing the incorporation of IgCC into the city climate action plan and Tempe's first IgCC construction project. So all right, Anitra, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi everyone, and thanks so much, Anne, for the nice introduction, and thank you for having all of us here today. Okay, I really want this talk today to be a celebration of the progress and initiatives that cities across Arizona are working hard to do to move green building forward. And we want to focus today on sustainable building code developments, specifically the International Green Construction Code. You might hear IgCC, so that's what it's referring to. And also I'll talk about part of my master's project, which is developing a nonprofit called the Arizona Build Green Coalition. I wanted to start by just kind of taking a bigger picture view, because I know we have a wide audience and some students here today too. So what are building codes? First of all, there's a set of rules established by a municipality. They create standards for constructed objects, and cities will adopt generally a family of codes. So that means they'll have many different codes like energy, commercial construction, single family construction, fire, plumbing. I think, for example, Scottsdale has 10 different codes in their family. So when you hear one, we're talking about the IgCC, which is one of those codes within a family, which I'll get into more in another slide. So also construction projects must comply with building codes in order to receive permits. So that's where they come into the process of construction. The codes are also enforceable, and they're usually mandatory, although some cities are doing some pretty creative means to adopt voluntary codes, and a lot of those cities have done that in Arizona with the IgCC. And another issue to know about building codes, which differs across the US and state by state is different. There are hybrid versions, there's state building codes, but Arizona is something called a home rule state. And what this means, if you hear that word, is that there's no statewide code adopted here in Arizona. So every local government can select the codes they want. There's even some examples of cities not having codes in the more rural areas. One big question, and I think point of confusion with a lot of people, is what's the difference between green codes and green rating systems? So if you think about codes, you can think about the IgCC or other codes like the IECC, Cal Green's example in California, where they've developed their own building codes in-house. Now that's in contrast to something probably most of us have heard of, which is LEED. The United States Green Building Council does the LEED rating system, which is one of the most popular rating systems. There's some other rating systems like Green Globes. The Living Building Challenge is one of the more aspirational systems. So it's important to differentiate these two green building initiatives when you're talking about them and trying to understand how to implement them. So we can go just comparing them. The codes are a baseline, they're minimum standards. So they set the floor on building practices, whereas the rating systems are more aspirational. The codes are a set of rules to abide by, and they're set up as model codes which cities can amend, whereas the rating systems are usually optional. There are some municipalities that have made rating systems mandatory, but that's the exception to the rule. And they also they're set up with a system of prerequisites. So a lot of the rating systems have certain criteria you have to meet to be a part of the rating system. And then you'll have options of how to receive points to achieve different levels. Like, for example, LEED, you can achieve 4 different levels, certified, gold, silver, and platinum. And that's done by, voluntary choice of which points to gain within the system. Also, codes are enforceable by a municipality, whereas rating systems, the reporting is done by the construction team and it's verified by a third-party nonprofit organization. So it's not necessarily enforceable in any way. It's just verified that they've met certain criteria. Codes are industry driven, whereas rating systems tend to be more market driven. So I hope we clarified the difference with that slide. All right, so what is the IgCC? The 2021 version, you can see a picture of it in the upper left corner, which has just come out. So it's a type of code, which the codes are, new versions are given out every 3 years. And it's administered by the ICC, which is the International Code Council. And in the slide on the bottom left, you can see a multitude of different codes that the ICC publishes. The IgCC was a part of this family of codes, and it was meant as a solution to go beyond the base standards for the development of commercial and multifamily green buildings. Now, the ICC codes, they're the most widely used in North America. So that's typically what cities are going to be looking at, this family of codes. They are in use or adopted in all 50 states. And the IgCC is the first green construction code with collaboration between a lot of the big main players in the green building arena, such as ASHRAE, United States Green Building Council, AIA, and IES. So that makes it somewhat unique in that there is a lot of collaboration between different entities to develop that code. The IgCC is also developed to be flexible and adaptable to local climate conditions. You can have amendments to the code according to your own needs, and there are prescriptive and performance options. So municipalities can use portions of that code in specific areas as an option, or they can adopt all of the IgCC as it is, or as Scottsdale is going to talk about, they can go through amendments that make it, specific to the city in question. And I wanted to just give you an overview of what this looks like for people who haven't seen it before. Here are the main chapters in the newest version of IgCC, 2021 version. And what I thought was interesting, if you look at chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, you have site sustainability, water use efficiency, energy efficiency, indoor environmental quality, materials and resources. Now, these are some of the same categories you will see in some of the rating systems. So, and they do have an appendix where you can use those categories to apply for the LEED system also. So they are trying to make that easy to overlap the two if there's a need to do that. Another interesting thing to note is that the ICC, they are putting out a green construction professional certification exam. So if you want to learn more about it, or you have staff that you want to educate, there is an exam that you can study for. It's open book, and that would give you a lot more background and information to use the code. I did contact them this week about that exam, because the one available now is the 2018 version. They said because of COVID, there is a little delay on the 2021 version, but it should be available in the 4th quarter of this year, which I plan on hopefully taking that myself. And I wanted to just talk about why are we looking at IgCC in particular compared to all the other green building tools that are out there. One thing in my research I've noticed is that throughout the state of Arizona, there tends to be a lot of interest in this specific green code. You've got Scottsdale, of course, being a leader in it from 2010, 2012, and having the 2015 version as a voluntary mandatory hybrid. It's voluntary but mandatory for projects receiving zoning bonuses. So that's a way to use it as an incentive for projects. And definitely want to celebrate today that Scottsdale is trying to get the 2021 version mandatory for all commercial construction. And they would be, if this is a success, they will be the first in the nation to adopt that version of the code. Tempe, who are going to have speak today also, they have not yet adopted the code. They have a slightly different process to go on about it. They have 3 municipal projects that are active, and they're using those projects to work with their code development people. So it's another way to go around the process of getting that code incorporated. Phoenix in 2012 adopted the code as voluntary. Gilbert has a 2018 version as voluntary. Kayenta back in 2010 received a lot of press for being a tribal city that had a project and has the code adopted as voluntary. There's lots of other municipalities I'm hearing that have interest in Arizona in this code, and I welcome you to contact me so I can put you on our list to get everybody together. But I know there's a lot of interest in this out there across the state. So what I'm doing, just doing the research with IgCC, I wanted to develop a tool to bring together the different municipalities across the state, just for partnerships, knowledge sharing, to be able to increase capacity and just have a forum where we can share what's going on day to day as different cities are trying different methods to get the green code incorporated. So the name of the nonprofit I have created is the Arizona Build Green Coalition, and its mission is to raise the floor on high performance building practices in Arizona. So its aim is to be neutral, be an unbiased resource for green building initiatives specific to the state, and no political or profitability ties to any particular green building tool. At the moment, we're looking at IgCC, but in the future, if something else pops up that's interesting, we could focus on that also. So the aim would be to spread this information about green building initiatives and to highlight the issues most current and relevant in impact. Just to give you a visual, if you look at all the different players in the system of construction, there's just so many different people and entities involved, from municipalities, architects, the universities, industry contractors, nonprofits. So what we're looking at is kind of being that missing piece to the puzzle, just to bring everybody together. And so if anyone's interested in participating, if you can add your name to a contact list or put it in the chat today. And what we're working on next is developing a research repository to collect all different information from the ICC and from the different municipalities and make that information available to everyone so people can add or use the information as they need. And that can help avoid remaking the wheel on a city-to-city basis, and allow everyone to just get together as a community to contribute resources and follow current events. And yes, additionally, we're going to do a LinkedIn page, which I think will provide a web platform to assist with that. So just introducing the 2 speakers we have. Thank you so much to Anthony and Braden from Scottsdale and Tempe. Anthony at Scottsdale has done 28 IgCC projects to date, which is quite impressive. He has a lot of knowledge to share, And again, like I said, they have pending the first adoption in the nation of IgCC 2021 as a mandatory code. And then we have Braden from Tempe, which mentions the IgCC in his previous climate action plan and in the current climate action plan that they're working on right now. I know there's a lot of attention to that, and I'm sure he will speak about it. And they have 3 municipal IgCC pilot projects. So that's very exciting. All right, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. And there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. And I will turn it over to Anthony.
Okay, thank you, Anitra. Very good overview, and I'll get my slides up. So first of all, thank you once again, Anitra, for giving that great overview of the distinctions and the functionality of the Green Construction Code. I want to say that this is really part of a long-term progression, because there are building trends happening in energy efficiency, indoor air quality, water, solar distribution, or generation. And this has been occurring over the last 20 plus years. We've been tracking it since we started our green building program in 1998. And we're seeing that economically things are really cost neutral. In the beginning, there were a lot of complaints or reservations about increased costs, but it's not so much today. And so we really have a lot to build on it. And I give credit to LEED and the Rating and US Green Building Council for really getting the industry behind it and mainstreaming a lot of this. It's not all 100% mainstream, but most of it is. And the other important thing as a part of this intro is that the most cities, well, all cities in Arizona are required to have a general plan. And in that general plan, there are usually sustainability items. In Scottsdale, we're working on our separate sustainability plan, but currently in our general plan, we actually have things related to energy, water, and environmental quality, material resources. So this is really great justification for adopting the Green Construction Code because of these long-term city visions and goals in order to translate that into policy, into building codes and standards. Also nationally, just looking at the International Energy Conservation Code, there's really a lot that's been happening. We can go back to the 70s, but if we trace the evolution of the Green Construction Code, we could see that it's headed towards net zero energy. It is moving towards consuming less energy, becoming more energy efficient, and thereby giving it the ability to ultimately operate off of renewable energy, of course, with appropriate technology such as battery technology. So I like to say that the green building of today will become tomorrow's building standard. And that has been demonstrated time in and again. If we look at various other standards, where there's accessibility, water efficiency, there's a lot of things that have become incorporated into the codes. And so my take has always been that ultimately the green building will go away, green building codes will go away, because it will become part of mainstream construction and building standards. And as I indicated, that's happening now. I'm going to just give some examples of these green component areas: site sustainability, water, energy, and environmental quality and materials, and give some examples of how some of these things are already transitioning into our codes and standards. And the first one, really, sustainability, is something that's very unique to each specific community, because there's no universal or national or international zoning code that cities adopt, even though there happens to be an international zoning code. I'm not aware of any cities that adopt that. Usually zoning and planning is generated locally through the community. And so that's the first challenge with the Green Construction Code, is that it must integrate or you amend those provisions in the code to be compatible and not to conflict with your local zoning and planning ordinance requirements. And I'll go give a few more examples to this. In Scottsdale, we elected to amend the code, amend things in, amend to provide further requirements. But here's another way that you can do it. And this is a table in the Green Construction Code. And these are called jurisdictional options. And jurisdictional options allow a jurisdiction to opt out of a specific requirement. For instance, at the top, you see their mitigation of heat island effect on walls. And the main body of the IgCC, there's a requirement, of course, for horizontal hardscape, but the Green Construction Code goes beyond that. It actually goes to walls. So that's just one example, and it just goes on. I'm not going to go through but this is a way to make the Green Construction Code more compatible with the local jurisdiction, with their existing, not just zoning and planning, but also with other requirements as well. So I gave an example of heat island mitigation for walls, but the base Green Construction Code talks about it for hardscape as well. Not only for roofs, it requires it for roofs, but also for hardscape. And this is some of the crossover with the energy code, because with the energy code, there are some requirements for coal roofs. And so some of this overlaps between some of the various codes. So you just need to make sure that you're not conflicting with what's in those other codes or within the local planning ordinances, as I indicated. Site water use efficiency irrigation systems is another thing that's very foreign for building codes, and usually it's going to be the water department that's handling this. But in Scottsdale, as a part of our effort to adopt the 2021 code, we're working with our water department to create the efficient irrigation system requirements. We already have a water conservation ordinance, but we haven't really gone into the details or requirements of designing irrigation systems. So there are provisions in the IgCC, and our water department was interested, and they wanted to amend and modify some things, which is what you do when you adopt a code. You actually allow for local amendments. So that's what we're incorporating. And in terms of water sense and indoor water use, there is a national standard for high efficiency plumbing fixtures. And this is an example where it interfaces with the codes again. The plumbing code actually has low flow plumbing rates, but water sense labeled fixtures actually have high efficiency requirements that are more efficient than the low flow. And this is something that we amended our plumbing code with. Even though it's in the Green Construction Code, we didn't want to contradict what was in the plumbing code versus the Green Construction Code. So we amended the plumbing code. So that's how these things are evolving over time. So I just talked about the high efficiency plumbing fixtures. There's also efficient hot water delivery. That's to ensure that you're not wasting water waiting for hot water. And that's something we actually amended in the plumbing code. It is in the Green Construction Code, but our approach is to not have conflicting requirements. So we amended our plumbing code to make it mainstream. And water bottle filling stations is in the IgCC, but we amended our plumbing code again to require water bottle filling stations. And the International Energy Conservation Code is in the Green Construction Code, but it goes a step beyond. And so with our amendments in Scottsdale, we decided to delete most of what's in the Green Construction Code and reference the Energy Code. There are a number of jurisdictions nationally that have adopted the 2015 and 2012 over the years, and some cities delete certain chapters because they feel satisfied with whatever that particular topic is, that they're covering it adequately through their local adopted code or ordinances. So these are the energy components under the IECC. And we're relying on this to really enforce some of the provisions in the Green Construction Code. And so we're making some amendments to the IECC to somewhat reflect the Green Construction Code. And then the Green Construction Code, when we adopt it, we amend that chapter out. So a lot of integration that's going on here. For solar, the Green Construction Code requires, well, actually, this is solar ready zones. This is an appendix in the Energy Conservation Code, and we're adopting both of those for commercial and residential, and we're going to amend it, some of those numbers in terms of the 10% and 30%. So this is getting buildings ready for future solar by making them solar ready. And then the IgCC, the Green Code, actually goes a step further. It requires that you install on-site solar energy. So we're still in the process of getting input from our boards and commissions on this. And most likely we're going to leave this in the Green Construction Code and not include it in the Energy Code. EV capable, we're in the midst of communicating with the Central Arizona Home Builders Association, the Arizona Multifamily Housing Association, and we're getting input on this as well. We're looking to include this in the Energy Code versus leaving it just in the Green Construction Code. And part of that, I guess, is a judgment call, but it's how we think that we can get things through the system, how our bureaucracy is organized here and code enforcement. And because a lot of this is going to be enforced, of course, by the building department. So we need to look at how we can make this a part of the existing codes that they're already using. So that's why we're splitting some things up here. Indoor environmental quality. 85% of all materials need to be low VOC. And the majority of materials out there are low VOC. Paints, sealants, adhesives, floor covering, their certification, labeling. And once again, credit to LEED and the US Green Building Council, because they really helped to pull the industry and mainstream many products and materials. So it's not like it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago where it was hard to find particular products, and then there was a monopoly happening on certain companies and certain products, and then they would have higher prices because of that niche market. It's no longer a niche market. It has expanded. So we're keeping this in the Green Construction Code. There's really no appropriate place in the other building codes. So we're going to keep it there. Material resources. This is to reduce waste. We're looking at doing a mandatory construction waste management plan. We're getting a lot of input and feedback on this. We reached out to Republic Services and Waste Management. And we're at this point, we're proposing an effective date to give the industry a year. Even though we're doing this now with the 28 projects that we've had over the last 10 years, it's different when you mainstream it. 28 projects compared to requiring everyone to do it is a big deal. And it requires the industry to tool up some. So we're looking at doing it by phasing it in over time. And Anitra has provided a lot of valuable information and research as we go through this process. So I really appreciate all the work that she's been doing to help us put this together as a mandatory component. But we also require, and this is an amendment in the Green Construction Code, that there's built-in pull-out kitchen cabinet bins for recycling and trash. This is a standard feature of most homes, And so this is something that we've been requiring all along as a part of our green building program, as part of the green construction code, the 28 projects that we've had. Many of them are multifamily apartments. So we've been getting that in. So now we're proposing to amend this, at least for the single family, into the residential code. That's where we're headed now. And then leave the commercial, because the green construction code is only for commercial buildings, including multifamily. We'll leave this requirement in the code. So we're kind of splitting it up depending on whether we're talking about single family or multifamily. And then for actual materials that are used in the building, these are the percentages that are in the green construction code. And we're going to just stay with that and not amend it. And the IgCC requires that you comply with any 2 of these options. And actually there's 2 more after this. Bio-based, and the previous one, recycled content, regional materials like concrete, masonry, and then multi-attribute materials, which means that you have to have environmental product declaration. So there's many paths here, and all of this is a part of the green construction code. It's different than the traditional codes. It's another layer. Once again, we're keeping this in the green construction code. We're not amending the building codes with this, because it's above what the regular building code would do. And so we feel that there's enough options here for applicants, for builders, for designers to select from. You look at the percentages, not less than 5% to be bio-based wood. They need to come from sustainably managed forests. So we feel that this is really doable as a mandatory code for all construction. These are some of the projects that we've been enforcing the green construction code on. And as I indicated, or Anitra indicated, that we use zoning bonuses. So this is something that we integrated into zoning. This is the way it has been. And then we also recognize LEED and Green Globe as an alternative compliance path. So if a builder wants to go under a rating system, we will allow that as being deemed to be in compliance with the IgCC. And we're getting a lot of multifamily, some commercial, but it's mostly multifamily that we're seeing, including hotels. So to wrap up, we're proposing to make this mandatory for all buildings. So that will go beyond just whether you receive zoning bonuses or not. It's something that we're in the flux with our planning department and input from city council. We do have members of council who would like to see this mandatory for all projects. And we have some individuals who are opposed to giving away zoning bonuses. We're just following the green construction code. Many of us feel that is something that you should be doing regardless of getting bonuses. So that's something that we're looking to do in the future. Our timeline is to get to city council by June. We keep pushing the date back. We keep getting more input. We have an environmental advisory commission, and we have the building advisory board. So, and we're getting some different recommendations from the 2 boards of commissions. So we have to finesse that and make sure that they all have the correct information. And then, of course, it's very important to have the public input, including from the Home Builders Association. And we're also getting input from the gas, Southwest Gas. So it makes for interesting conversation when we get a lot of different diverse views in the room discussing these things. But it is encouraging having the support of council and having the backing of your general plan or climate action plan. All of these things really help move this forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Braden Kay, who's the sustainability director and doing some great things at the city there. So I'll stop sharing. Braden.
Thanks so much, Anthony, and just a huge thank you to both Anitra and Anthony. As most folks on the Zoom should know, Anthony's been in just an incredible leader in the green building space for many years. And I think the thing that I want to personally note about the work is just how generous Anthony has been with his time, with us, with the city of Phoenix, with his volunteer contributions at the national level on the International Green Building Code. We are so lucky to have a leader like Anthony, both at the national level and also with all of the support that Anthony lends locally. So Anthony, I know you've gotten awards and recognition for this, but it's important for us every time you speak to realize how lucky we are to have you here in the region and leading the way. And I will definitely be popping a few sparkling waters when you guys get this mandatory code passed. That's going to be such a huge win if when that happens. And Anitra, it's very rare that we have a graduate student like you that really is pushing the field and creating a new nonprofit and trying to, as you create your own professional path, also try to do so much good in terms of your support of this work, both at ASU and with Scottsdale and with Tempe and other cities. So just really grateful for you hosting today, but also all the work you're doing to try to promote green buildings across the state and across the region. So I was joking with someone earlier. I am just the lowly chorus member here. I do not have the technical expertise that either Anthony or Anitra have, but I can talk to you about what the opportunity I believe the International Green Construction Code provides and the why Tempe has really been interested in the International Green Construction Code as a way of achieving some of the really important sustainability and resilience outcomes that we believe Tempe needs to have and that we need to have as a region and as a state. So in 2019, we did our first climate action plan and we did our first greenhouse gas inventory and embarked on our first plan. The plan had both an emissions reduction component and then the resilience component was really centered on resilience to extreme heat and motivating a more shaded and urban, urban cooling throughout our city. In that first plan, our Sustainability Commission, who has been incredible leaders in this work, recommended 3 highlight actions. We originally have 4, and then we kind of distilled them into 3. So one is the green codes and standards work that I'm going to talk about today. And when we talk about green codes and standards, we talk both about green stormwater infrastructure standards, with which Scottsdale also has been an amazing leader in, and the work that Tim Connor and Anthony and the others have been doing in the green stormwater infrastructure space, as well as the International Green Construction Code. We have this as our highlight action on resilience to extreme heat. And so, even though I would say you could have IgCC obviously has a lot of benefits in all of the different areas that Anthony has talked about, we wanted to promote IgCC as being a mechanism to support the built environment into investing more in cool materials, building orientation, and shading. And so at the end of the day, the reason that IgCC, I believe, is such an important policy tool is because you customize it to your own city. And ideally you customize it to your own region. So if we as a region decide that we need to mandate building orientation, or we need to mandate critical things to make sure that we're not, creating a built environment that cannot handle being Riyadh, because that's where we're headed. We are going to be 125 degrees over 50 days of summer by the 2050s. We're gonna hit 50 days summer over 110 degrees in the 2040s. And our built environment is not currently ready for that future that we clearly know we're barreling towards. And so the IgCC is a way, especially if we make these regional, eventually, these regional adoption or adaptations to create a Southwest IgCC, we have the opportunity to really shape our built environment so it's ready for that coming extreme heat. And that's why we've been so interested in watching what Scottsdale's done and really seeing Scottsdale as a leader that's helping forecast where we can go with building code as being a critical measure in making this a more livable place that can thrive during the coming type of heat we're going to be getting every summer. We also have highlight actions in transportation and in energy. At some later point, I can come and talk to you about the entire update. We tried to focus our work in climate action around youth, around businesses, around climate justice, and around neighborhoods. But today we'll just focus on extreme heat. So one other piece I do want to just make sure that is clear in this extreme heat conversation is, our region is really dealing with this double whammy of both greenhouse gas emissions and the urban heat island effect. So we know from studies that both Tucson and the Phoenix regions have seen a 2.5 degree increase in daytime temperatures over the last 30 years. But Phoenix has seen a nighttime temperature increase of 7.5 degrees, where Tucson has only seen the 2.5 nighttime increase, which means the Phoenix urban heat island is contributing around 5 additional degrees of nighttime temperature. And that's the context in which we have to look at this heat issue is whether you believe it, now we have more and more people in the region that are willing to accept climate change is happening. Even if you don't believe in climate change, we need the entire region to believe in urban heat island because it's true. And we know for a fact, the most conservative members we've talked to in our region, are willing to admit that urban heat island is a thing and needs to be mitigated through changes in the built environment. So we have a real opening here to talk about both green stormwater infrastructure and building code as being critical to changing the shape of our urban heat island profile. So I don't have to tell you, for those of you that experienced the summer of 2020, that really was the summer that told us what the future was going to look like. And the future looks deadly. The future looks expensive. The future looks bad for business. The future looks bad for public health. So we know that 2020 is going to be what the future looks like. It's very likely to be an average future in 2040s and definitely in the 2050s. And we need to act. We need to act accordingly. I see Violsa's on. We have a lot of leaders in this intersection of extreme heat and public health. And we've had a lot of folks organized for the last 5, 6, 7 years talking about the public health benefits of making a real dent in our extreme heat crisis here locally. We can at some point have a longer conversation about the need for discussing heat as a social justice and racial justice issue. Scottsdale has mapped how heat is showing up in the city. We have maps that are showing how heat shows up where we have the most vulnerable, and it's a really important aspect to how we think about heat. But let me get to the building code and how we're thinking about the building code. So we are just at a very early stage. We are building 3 city buildings using the IgCC, and we're now our mayor and council will be considering in the next several months a city building policy that basically mandates that all future city buildings are built with the IgCC. We now have a fully funded FTE line in our community development. We actually haven't hired that person yet. We've been using that money to hire one of the consultants that Scottsdale uses to help us with our own Tempe green code and adopting that. But we do have a line item for a full-time position to help us move in that regard. And then we've been building, we have 3 city projects, a public works yard, a public pool community center, and a fire station that we're all building under the checklists of the 2015 IgCC. So the way we view the work right now is We're testing pilot codes in city buildings. That's what we're doing with the 3 city buildings I've just mentioned. We're working on creating our Tempe version of the IgCC currently, but it's not currently in our codes. Then when you look at Scottsdale, Scottsdale's about to jump from beginner to intermediate or advanced once they have their mandatory code. But when you look at Scottsdale, they have IgCC into the green building codes. They've been promoting private sector use, the 28 buildings you heard about. They've been offering incentives, but they don't yet require it for all private development. That's sort of the thing that's holding Scottsdale back in terms of being even more of a leader in this space. Then we see San Jose, which does require green code for all city buildings, but it's only limited to the city. So the place where we've found that has the best comprehensive approach, and really where I think our region needs to go, is Tel Aviv, which has a regional building code that covers multiple cities. They've customized that code so that it adapts to all types of buildings and is adapted for their region. And then this year, it's going to become mandatory. So when we think about where we really need to go for this kind of widespread adoption, where the building code could be a critical solution for resilience to extreme heat and some of our other sustainability and resilience challenges, we need regional, customized, mandatory. And so, we're not there yet. We need to understand sort of where we are now and how we get to where we could go. We would not be anywhere close to being on this trajectory without the amazing leadership of Scottsdale and all the work that Anthony and the team have done there. And my hope is with Tempe's work, we're never going to lead on this. We're at least 10 or 15 years behind where Scottsdale is, but we're starting our pilot projects. We're getting momentum going. And our hope is that we're creating a culture within our own city government, as well as with starting to create a culture with our development community, where the International Green Construction Code is really seen as the way to go and good for business as well as good for development. So that's where we currently are at in the work. And then happy to take additional questions. I do want to say I have a member or two from our community development staff. This has not been work done just by my office by any degree. Our community development department has been incredible leaders in this space. And then we've also had a tremendous amount of support from our engineering transportation department. The engineering folks have been the ones using IgCC on the 3 city buildings that we're currently building. So it's a citywide effort to try to use IgCC as a path, and I'm really hopeful for where this work can go. I also want to say we had some great mentorship from the city of Boise. They have used a lot of IgCC. They've used the IgCC for their city buildings and have been incredible mentors to us in this work as well. And with that, I'll leave it to questions and conversations. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Great. Thank you so much, Braden and Anthony and Anitra. What a fantastic set of presentations.